The information provided in this presentation is for educational and informational purposes only, and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical, legal, or public health advice. Always seek the guidance of a qualified professional with any questions you may have regarding a health condition or legal matter. The views and opinions expressed in this video are those of the creator, and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any public health agency. Starts with a stomachache, a dull, cramping pain you dismiss as something you ate. By morning, it's a full-blown mutiny in your gut. Then the calls begin. First, a few to the local health clinic, then a dozen. By noon, the emergency room is seeing a surge of patients, all with the same violent, debilitating symptoms. They're all ages from all walks of life, but they have one thing in common. Last Saturday, they all ate at the same catered charity luncheon. Panic begins to simmer in the community. What was in the food? Was it a virus? A chemical? Is it still out there? When a mystery like this unfolds, when an invisible enemy attacks a community, we don't call the police. We don't call the FBI. We call a different kind of detective, a specialist in a field where the crime scene is a kitchen, the weapon is a microbe, and the victim is the public. You know them as the health inspector. They are one of the most visible, yet least understood figures in our entire public health system. We see them walk into our favorite coffee shop, clipboard in hand, and the mood instantly changes. We see the letter grade in the window, an AAB, sometimes a dreaded C, and we make a snap judgment. But what do they actually do? What gives them the almost unbelievable power to walk into a private business and shut it down on the spot? What are they really looking for beyond the obvious dirt and grime? Over the course of this series, we are going to pull back the curtain. We will take you deep inside the hidden world of the American health inspector. You will learn the science they use to hunt down deadly pathogens like E. coli and Salmonella. You'll understand the complex web of laws that gives them their authority. We'll decode their inspection reports, revealing the secret language of violations. And yes, we will share the shocking, unbelievable, and sometimes downright disgusting things they find in the places where our food is made. By the end, you won't just see a grade in a window. You'll see a story. You'll understand the constant, invisible battle being waged every single day to keep you and your family safe. But to truly grasp the weight of that clipboard, you first have to imagine a world without it. A world that wasn't that long ago. You have to go back to the turn of the 20th century, to America's Gilded Age. It was an era of explosive growth, of breathtaking innovation, and of terrifying danger, especially when it came to your food. Picture it. You're walking through a major city like Chicago or New York in 1905. The Industrial Revolution is in full swing. The air is thick with smoke, the streets are crowded, and the noise is deafening. But the real assault on your senses is the smell. It's a mix of coal, manure, and something else, the smell of decay. Because in 1905, there were no federal laws governing the safety of what you ate. The food industry was a lawless Wild West. The milk your children drank was routinely diluted with chalky, contaminated water from polluted rivers to stretch the supply. To hide the bluish tint, sellers would add plaster or even calves' brains. Butter wasn't butter. It was often a mix of rancid lard, soap, and chemicals. The bright red color of the ketchup on your table? It didn't come from tomatoes. It came from coal tar dye, a known poison, mixed with mashed pumpkin rinds and preservatives like boric acid. But nowhere was the danger more profound than in the meatpacking industry. The conditions were something out of a nightmare. Animals, often sick and diseased, were slaughtered on filthy floors. The meat would be stored in giant piles, exposed to rats and insects. When the meat went bad, which it did constantly, workers had a simple solution. They'd treat it with chemicals like formaldehyde to kill the smell, rub it with borax to get rid of the slime, and then grind it all up with the fresher meat. Sausages were the perfect place to hide the evidence. Scraps from the floor, rat droppings, meat that had been poisoned and set out for the rats, and even the rats themselves were sometimes swept up and shoveled into the grinders. There were stories, grim and persistent, of workers who had slipped and fallen into the giant rendering vats, their bodies processed right along with the animal parts into a product called Durham's Pure Leaf Lard. The public had no idea. They trusted the labels. They trusted the brands. They were being poisoned and they didn't even know it. A few scientists and crusading journalists tried to sound the alarm, but their voices were drowned out by the powerful corporations that profited from the deception. Then in 1906, a literary bomb exploded. A young socialist writer named Upton Sinclair published a novel called The Jungle. Sinclair had spent 7 weeks working undercover in Chicago's meatpacking plants, and his book was a brutal, unflinching exposé of what he saw. He wrote the book hoping to ignite a passion for socialism by highlighting the horrific exploitation of immigrant workers. But the public latched onto something else entirely. They were horrified by the vivid, stomach-churning descriptions of what was going into their food. The book became an instant runaway bestseller. People were disgusted. They were terrified. The story goes that President Theodore Roosevelt was eating breakfast sausage while reading a chapter of The Jungle, and was so repulsed he threw it out the window of the White House. He famously wrote, "The specific evils you point out shall, if their existence be proved, and if I have the power, be eradicated." The public outcry was deafening. The meatpacking industry tried to deny the allegations, calling them lies and socialist propaganda. But Roosevelt sent his own investigators to Chicago, and their secret report was even more damning than Sinclair's book. Confirmed everything. The pressure became unbearable. Within months, Congress, spurred on by a furious President Roosevelt and a revolted public, passed 2 landmark pieces of legislation: the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. For the very first time, the federal government had the authority to inspect meat sold across state lines. It outlawed the sale of contaminated foods and medicines and demanded truthful labeling. It was a revolution. It was the birth of the modern food safety system. These laws were the first shots fired in a long ongoing war against foodborne illness. They established a fundamental principle: that every single citizen has a right to safe, wholesome, and honestly labeled food. And they created the very first generation of the soldier who would fight this war on the front lines. The inspector. The person who would walk into those plants, not as a worker, but as a representative of the public, armed with the power of the law. The clipboard that an inspector carries today, the badge they wear, the authority they command, it is all a direct legacy of that moment. It's a legacy born from spoiled meat, rat-infested factories, and the public outrage sparked by a single powerful book. This history is the bedrock of their authority. But a law on a piece of paper is one thing. Facing down a defiant restaurant owner, tracing a deadly pathogen back to a single contaminated batch of lettuce, or making the gut-wrenching decision to shut down a beloved local diner, that requires a different kind of power. It requires a specific set of skills, a deep knowledge of science, and an unshakable commitment to public health. So where does that power actually come from, and what does it take to become one of these modern-day public health detectives? The answer, like so much in the United States, begins with the Constitution. Specifically, the 10th Amendment, which reserves powers not delegated to the federal government to the states. And one of the most fundamental of those powers is the police power, the authority to regulate for the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. This is the ultimate wellspring of a health inspector's authority. It's not a federal mandate. It's a power that flows directly from the states to protect the people within their borders. From there, the authority cascades downwards. State legislatures pass laws creating public health agencies and grant them the power to write specific regulations. These regulations are what we commonly call the health code or food code. And this isn't some flimsy pamphlet. It's a dense, highly detailed legal document that governs everything from the construction of a restaurant kitchen to the personal hygiene of a single-line cook. Now, most states don't write their food code from scratch. They typically adopt a model, and the gold standard is the FDA Food Code. Think of the FDA Food Code as a massive science-based best practices guide. It's a collaboration of scientists, epidemiologists, and industry experts that gets updated every 4 years to reflect the latest in food safety science. It covers time and temperature controls for potentially hazardous foods, protocols for preventing cross-contamination, requirements for hand washing, standards for sanitizing equipment, and even the approved sources from which a restaurant can buy its ingredients. But here's the key. The FDA Food Code is a recommendation, not a federal law. It's up to each state, and often each county or city, to adopt it, either in whole or in part. They can add their own rules, making them stricter to address local concerns. This is why a rule in New York City might be slightly different from one in rural Montana. The local health department is the final authority, the entity that hires, trains, and deploys the inspectors who walk through those kitchen doors. The inspector isn't just a government employee. They are the direct, on-the-ground embodiment of that state's constitutional power to protect you. So, what does it take to become the person entrusted with this power? It's not a job you simply fall into. The path is demanding, requiring a specific blend of academic knowledge and real-world grit. The journey almost always begins with a college degree. We're not talking about a general business degree. The standard is a Bachelor of Science, typically in a field like environmental health, public health, biology, or chemistry. This scientific foundation is non-negotiable. An inspector needs to understand microbiology to know how salmonella multiplies. They need to grasp chemistry to understand how sanitizers work and why certain cleaning chemicals can't be mixed. They are, first and foremost, applied scientists. After graduation, the REHS training begins. You don't just get a badge and a clipboard. New hires are put through a rigorous training program that can last for months. They spend endless hours in a classroom, memorizing the local food code line by line, chapter by chapter. They study the science of foodborne illness, learning the specific pathogens, their incubation periods, their symptoms, and the foods they love to contaminate. They learn about integrated pest management, hazard analysis and critical control points, or HACCP, plans, and the engineering principles behind proper ventilation and plumbing. But the classroom is only half the battle. The other half is in the field, shadowing senior inspectors. This is where the textbook knowledge collides with the messy reality of a busy kitchen. A trainee learns to see a restaurant not as a customer, but as a complex system of potential risks. They learn where to look, what to ask, and how to read the subtle signs of a problem. They watch how a veteran inspector handles a confrontational manager, how they calmly explain a violation to a cook who barely speaks English, and how they praise a team that's doing everything right. This apprenticeship is about more than just finding violations. It's about learning the art of communication, diplomacy, and education. Finally, to become fully fledged, many inspectors must become certified or licensed. This often involves passing a grueling exam to earn a credential like the Registered Environmental Health Specialist, or REHS. This isn't just a formality. It's a professional standard that proves they have mastered a national body of knowledge. It's a signal to the public and to the restaurant industry that this person is a qualified professional, not just someone with a checklist. But beyond the degrees and the certifications, there's a certain type of person who thrives in this role. You need an almost obsessive attention to detail. The kind of person who notices the tiny crack in a cutting board where bacteria can hide, or the faint smell of grease that suggests a ventilation hood hasn't been properly cleaned. You need to be incredibly inquisitive, always asking why. Why is that container of chicken sitting on the counter? Why is the dishwasher not reaching the right temperature? You also need a unique combination of toughness and empathy. An inspector has to be comfortable with conflict. They have to be able to stand their ground, write a ticket, and even shut down a business that poses an imminent threat to public health. They are, after all, enforcing the law. But they also need to be educators. The goal isn't just to punish, but to prevent. A great inspector can explain the why behind the rule, helping a restaurant owner understand the science so they can fix the problem for good. They build relationships, becoming a trusted resource rather than a feared adversary. They are part detective, part scientist, part lawyer, and part teacher. They carry the weight of their community's health on their shoulders every single day. They are the product of a legal system that stretches back to the Constitution and a scientific education that represents the forefront of food safety. They are armed with a codebook filled with hundreds of pages of regulations and the authority to enforce them without compromise. So now we know who they are and where their power comes from. The next question is, what actually happens when they step out of their car and walk towards that front door? What is the first thing they do? What are they looking for when their eyes scan the dining room, the service station, and finally, the chaos of a kitchen in the middle of a lunch rush? The inspection has officially begun. The very first action is not a mad dash for the kitchen. It's a deliberate, almost unnervingly calm stop. The inspector plants their feet just inside the door and performs what's called a general sweep. This isn't a casual glance. It's a rapid, systematic assessment of the entire environment the public interacts with. Their brain is a supercomputer processing dozens of inputs simultaneously. What's the ambient smell? Is it the appetizing aroma of food? Or is there an undercurrent of stale grease, sour mop water, or the faint, sweet, sickly scent of a pest problem? Are there flies buzzing around the dining room? If there are flies out here, imagine what the situation is like where the food is actually being stored and prepared. They observe the manager, who is now nervously approaching, clipboard in hand. The inspector's demeanor is crucial. They are not there to be an adversary. They are there as a regulator, an educator, and a guardian of public health. They'll produce their credentials, state the purpose of their visit, a routine, unannounced inspection, and ask the manager or the person in charge to accompany them. This is a legal requirement. The operator has a right to see every violation as it's found. This isn't a gotcha game. It's a transparent audit. But while this brief, professional exchange is happening, the inspector's eyes are still moving. They're looking down. The floors. Are they clean? Is the grout between the tiles dark with grime? Are the corners filled with dust bunnies and old food debris? A dirty floor in the dining room is more than just an aesthetic issue. It's a direct indicator of the restaurant's overall cleaning schedule and standards. If they can't keep the public-facing areas clean, the chances that they're meticulously scrubbing the hidden corners of the kitchen are slim to none. Furthermore, accumulated grime and food waste is a buffet for cockroaches and rodents. Then they look up. The ceilings. Are there water stains? A brown or yellow stain on a ceiling tile is a screaming red flag. It means there's a leak somewhere. That leak could be from a plumbing line, which could be dripping contaminated water onto surfaces below. Or it could be from a leaky roof, creating the perfect damp, dark environment for mold to flourish. Mold spores can become airborne, settling on food and sickening customers. They'll also check the light fixtures. Are they clean, or are they fuzzy with a thick coat of dust? More importantly, in areas over food service, are the bulbs shielded with protective covers? Imagine a light bulb shattering over a self-service salad bar. Without a cover, hundreds of tiny, sharp glass fragments would rain down into the lettuce, the tomatoes, the dressings. That's a massive physical contamination risk. Next, the tables and booths. The inspector might run a hand along the underside of a table. Is it sticky and coated with old gum and caked on food? A surface that isn't properly cleaned and sanitized is a fomite, an object that can carry infectious agents. A family with a toddler sits down. The child drops their fork, picks it up and puts it in their mouth. If the table is contaminated with bacteria from a previous diner, that child could get sick. It's that simple, that direct a line of transmission. The focus then shifts to one of the most high-risk areas in the front of the house, the self-service station. The soda machine, the condiment pumps, the salad bar. These are places where dozens, even hundreds, of people are interacting with shared utensils and surfaces. The inspector checks the ice chute on the soda machine. Is there a slimy, pink or black residue inside? That's biofilm, a colony of bacteria that can contaminate every single cup of ice. They'll look at the nozzles where the soda comes out. Are they clean? Or are they sticky with syrup residue that attracts flies? The condiment station is another hot spot. Are the ketchup bottles wiped down? Or are they crusty and sticky? Are the tongs for the lemon wedges sitting in a pool of stagnant water? Every shared utensil should be stored properly, either in the food with the handle up, or in a container of running water, or replaced every few hours. Leaving them on a dirty counter is asking for trouble. But the salad bar? The salad bar is a universe of potential violations. Here, temperature is king. The inspector will use their high-tech, calibrated thermometer to check the temperature of the food items. Cold foods like potato salad, cut melons or leafy greens must be held at or below 41 degrees Fahrenheit. This is what's known as the temperature danger zone. Between 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit, bacteria like Salmonella, E. coli and Listeria can multiply at an astonishing rate. A single bacterium can become billions in just a few hours in that zone. So if that cottage cheese is sitting at 50 degrees, it's not just warm cottage cheese. It's a potential petri dish. The inspector will also check the sneeze guard. Is it present? Is it at the correct height and depth to actually protect the food from a customer's cough or sneeze? They'll observe customer behavior. Are people using the provided tongs and spoons, or are they reaching in with their bare hands? While the inspector can't cite the customers, they can and will talk to the manager about the importance of monitoring these areas. While all of this is happening, they are also conducting a silent, ongoing assessment of employee health and hygiene. They're watching the servers, the bussers, the hosts. Do they have clean uniforms? Are their fingernails trimmed? Do they have their hair properly restrained in a hat or a hairnet? Are they drinking from an open cup near a food service area, where a splash could contaminate clean glasses? Did that server just wipe their nose with their hand and then grab a handful of silverware to set a table? That's a direct route for pathogen transmission. This initial observation of the front-of-house staff provides a baseline. It's a preview of the behaviors and habits they are likely to see when they finally push through those swinging doors into the heart of the operation. Every single one of these observations, from the dusty ceiling vent to the temperature of the ranch dressing, is a data point. It's a piece of a puzzle. The inspector is building a preliminary picture of the restaurant's management, its culture of food safety, and its commitment to public health. A well-run, clean, and organized dining room often, though not always, correlates with a well-run kitchen. A chaotic and dirty front of house, on the other hand, is a serious warning sign of what's to come. With this initial assessment complete, a mental checklist already forming, the inspector has a foundational understanding of the establishment. They've gathered clues from the periphery. Now it's time to move to the source. They've seen where the food ends up, but they haven't yet seen where it's born, where it's stored, thawed, prepped, cooked, and plated. They give a nod to the manager, their expression unreadable but professional, and turn towards the kitchen. The real inspection, the part that separates a passing grade from a shutdown order, is about to begin. The moment they cross that threshold, a whole new, far more complex world of risks and regulations opens up. The first 30 seconds inside the kitchen are a sensory assault. Not with a clipboard and a checklist, but with eyes, ears, and nose. Is the air thick with the smell of old grease? Is there a subtle, sweet, decaying odor hiding beneath the scent of garlic and onions? Is the floor dangerously slick? Does the clatter of pans echo in a clean, well-organized space? Or is it a symphony of chaos? This initial, instinctual assessment creates a baseline. It tells the inspector what kind of operation they're walking into before they check a single temperature. But instinct is just the starting point. The process of a real inspection is a meticulous, forensic journey. And it almost always follows the path of the food itself, from the moment it arrives at the back door to the moment it's placed in front of a customer. This is called the flow of food, and it's the inspector's roadmap to finding potential disasters. The journey begins at the receiving area. This is the restaurant's first point of contact with its ingredients, and its first opportunity to fail. The inspector looks at the back door. Is it sealed properly? Or is there a gap underneath inviting rodents and insects inside? They might ask to see recent invoices. They aren't checking the restaurant's budget. They're verifying that the food is coming from approved, reputable sources. A receipt from a major food distributor is good. A handwritten note from a guy selling fresh fish out of an unmarked van is a major violation. This is about chain of custody. You have to know with certainty that the food hasn't been stored in an unsafe garage or transported in a hot car trunk. From receiving, the food moves into storage, and the inspector follows. First, dry storage. It seems simple. Cans, bags of flour, boxes of pasta. But the dangers are hidden in plain sight. Every shelf must be at least 6 inches off the floor. This isn't an arbitrary design choice. It's to allow for proper cleaning, and to prevent pests from turning a forgotten bag of rice into a home. The inspector will run their hand along the shelves, checking for dust, debris, or rodent droppings. They'll look for damaged packaging, ripped bags, or, most critically, dented, swollen, or rusted cans. A swollen can might not just be spoiled. It could be a breeding ground for Clostridium botulinum, the bacteria that produces the deadliest toxin known to man. They'll check dates, making sure the kitchen is following the principle of first in, first out, or FIFO. Using older stock first isn't just about reducing waste. It's about preventing the use of expired, potentially hazardous ingredients. Next, the inspector moves to the place where bacteria can truly thrive: cold storage. The walk-in refrigerator and freezer. When that heavy door swings open, the inspector's first action is to look for the thermometer. Is it present? Is it working? Does it read 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below? Then, their own calibrated thermometer comes out to verify. A restaurant's thermometer might be broken, reading a safe 38 degrees when the actual temperature inside has crept up to a dangerous 48. With a flashlight, they scan the shelves. This is where one of the most common and dangerous violations occurs: improper storage. It's a simple rule with life or death consequences. Raw animal products must always be stored on the lowest shelves. Ready-to-eat foods like salads, cooked meats, and desserts must be stored on the top shelves. Why? Imagine a container of raw chicken stored above a freshly made cheesecake. A single drop of contaminated chicken juice, invisible to the naked eye, could fall onto that cake. The chicken will later be cooked, killing any salmonella bacteria. But the cheesecake will be served as is, now carrying a payload of pathogens directly to an unsuspecting customer. The inspector is looking for these ticking time bombs. They're checking that every container is covered, labeled with the product name, and dated. An undated pan of chili is a mystery. Was it made yesterday or last Tuesday? Without a date, it's a gamble, and public health doesn't gamble. From the cold, we move to the heat of the kitchen, the preparation area. This is the transition zone, where raw ingredients are transformed. And it's a minefield of potential cross-contamination. The inspector will examine the cutting boards. Are they using color-coded boards? Green for produce, red for raw meat, yellow for poultry? Or is the same scarred, porous wooden board being used to dice onions right after trimming raw chicken? Those deep grooves in a worn-out cutting board are microscopic apartment buildings for bacteria, impossible to properly clean and sanitize. They'll inspect the can opener, looking for built-up metal shavings and food debris. They'll look at the meat slicer, a notoriously difficult piece of equipment to clean. Are there old, dried bits of food caked around the blade and guard? These are all potential sources of contamination. But in the prep area, one thing stands above all else in importance: the hand-washing sink. An inspector will locate every single one. By law, a hand-washing sink must be completely unobstructed, stocked with hot water, soap and paper towels or an air dryer, and used for nothing else. If an inspector sees a stack of dirty pans in the sink, or finds the soap dispenser is empty, or the path to it is blocked by a garbage can, it's an immediate, critical violation. It signals a fundamental breakdown in the safety culture of the kitchen. They'll observe the staff. Are they washing their hands between tasks? After touching their face or phone? After handling raw meat? The hands of a food worker are the primary vehicle for transmitting disease in a restaurant. A failure here is a failure everywhere. Now the food moves to the cook line. This is the kill step. The application of heat designed to destroy the dangerous pathogens that might be present. The inspector's probe thermometer, their most trusted tool, emerges once again. That burger patty sizzling on the grill might look perfectly brown, but the inspector is concerned with internal temperature. For ground beef, it must reach 155 degrees Fahrenheit to be safe. For a chicken breast, it's 165 degrees. They will physically take a piece of chicken off the grill, insert the thermometer into the thickest part, and wait for the reading. They'll ask the cooks how they verify temperatures. If the answer is, "We just cut it and look," or "We go by time," that's a red flag. Professional kitchens must use a thermometer. It's the only way to know for sure that the food is safe. But even after the kill step, the danger isn't gone. The final stage in the flow of food is holding and serving. Think of the steam table at a buffet, or the pot of soup on the stove. Food being held hot must remain at 135 degrees or higher. The cold food on a salad bar must be kept at 41 degrees or lower. That entire range in between, from 41 to 135 degrees, is the temperature danger zone. In this zone, bacteria don't just survive. They multiply at an exponential rate. A food item left in the danger zone for more than a couple of hours can become a public health hazard. The inspector will use their thermometer to check the temperature of the green beans in the steam table, the potato salad in the cold well, the sliced tomatoes sitting on a prep counter. Each reading tells a story. Each one is a piece of evidence. From the back door to the front line, the inspector has followed the food, scrutinizing every step, knowing that a single failure anywhere along this chain can be the difference between a safe meal and a public health crisis. But the chain of custody for food safety doesn't end with physical objects and temperature gauges. It extends to the most unpredictable element in any kitchen: the people. Now, the inspector's focus shifts from the environment to the human systems that govern it. The questions begin. They are not an interrogation, not yet. They are a conversation, a calibrated dance of inquiry and observation. The inspector speaks with the manager, the person whose name is on the license hanging by the door. The tone is professional, calm, but every word is chosen with purpose. They ask about employee health policies. If a cook calls in sick with vomiting or diarrhea, what is your protocol? It's a direct question, but the real test is in the answer. Is there hesitation? Does the manager recite a memorized corporate policy? Or do they describe a real-world process they actually follow? Do they understand that an employee with norovirus can infect dozens of customers before their shift is even over? The inspector is listening, but they are also watching. They observe the line cooks. Do they wash their hands between tasks? Is the person handling raw chicken the same person plating a salad without changing gloves and washing up? These aren't just minor infractions. They are the fundamental grammar of food safety. A single cross-contamination event is like a spark in a dry forest. It's often invisible, silent, but the potential for devastation is immense. The inspector asks to see the logs. The temperature logs for the refrigerators and freezers. The cooling logs for large batches of soup or chili. The sanitation logs for the dishwasher. This paperwork is the restaurant's story, written day by day, hour by hour. It's supposed to be a testament to their diligence. The manager retrieves a clipboard, the pages neat and orderly. The inspector flips through them. The numbers are all there. The walk-in refrigerator temperatures are recorded 3 times a day, every day for the past month. And every single entry is perfect. 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 39, 40, 39. A perfect, unwavering rhythm of compliance. Too perfect. An experienced inspector knows that reality is rarely so neat. A real functioning walk-in cooler has cycles. The temperature fluctuates slightly when the door is open frequently during a busy lunch rush, or when a large delivery of warm produce is loaded in. It should recover, of course, but the log should reflect that slight ebb and flow. A flat, unchanging line of perfect numbers doesn't look like diligence. It looks like fiction. It looks like someone filled out a month's worth of logs in 5 minutes with a cup of coffee. This is a red flag. Not just a violation but a potential deception. It suggests a systemic problem, a culture where faking compliance is easier than actually achieving it. The inspector's demeanor doesn't change.
No saben aquiescentes, no hubert suspicion.
They simply make a note and continue the process, but their internal map of this kitchen has just been redrawn. A new critical path has opened up, and they must follow it. They ask about staff training. When was the last time your staff received food handler training? The manager points to certificates on the wall, but a certificate is just a piece of paper. The inspector turns to a young cook prepping vegetables. Can you show me where you sanitize your cutting boards? The cook points to a 3-compartment sink. And what are the steps? The cook hesitates. Wash, rinse, and dry? He missed the most critical step. Sanitize. That single omission, that gap in knowledge, means the cutting board he's using to chop salad greens could be harboring bacteria from the raw meat prepped there an hour earlier. The inspector then asks, where do you check the concentration of the sanitizer? The cook gives a blank stare. The chemical solution in that 3rd sink is useless if it's too weak, and it can be toxic if it's too strong. It must be tested with special strips. The fact that the cook doesn't even know what they are speaks volumes. The certificates on the wall are meaningless. The training was a formality, not an education. This isn't a kitchen operating with a few minor flaws. This is a system built on a fragile foundation of ignorance and apathy. The inspector knows that a system like this doesn't just bend under pressure. It shatters. And the fallout from that shattering is measured in hospital visits and public health alerts. The inspector circles back to the walk-in cooler, the source of that first, nagging suspicion. The perfect temperature logs. I'd like to check the temperatures and hear myself, they say, pulling out their own thermometer. It's a precision instrument, calibrated regularly to be accurate within a single degree. This is the moment of truth. The manager follows, a nervous energy now radiating from him. The inspector doesn't just check the ambient air temperature displayed on the unit's external dial. That can be misleading. They go deep inside, past the crates of lettuce and boxes of tomatoes, to the items that are most vulnerable. They open a container of prepared chicken salad. They insert the metal probe into the thickest part, careful not to touch the sides of the container. They wait. The digital numbers on the thermometer's display climb. 41 degrees, 42, 45, 48. They stop at 51 degrees Fahrenheit. The air is cold, but the food is not. It is sitting squarely in the middle of the temperature danger zone. This is the temperature range between 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit, where bacteria don't just survive, they thrive. They multiply exponentially. A single listeria cell on that chicken at this temperature can become 2 in 20 minutes. 2 become 4. 4 become 8. In just a few hours, it becomes a colony of millions. An invisible army ready to invade the digestive system of an unsuspecting customer. For a healthy adult, this might mean a few miserable days. For a child, an elderly person, or someone with a compromised immune system, it can be a death sentence. The falsified logs are no longer just a suspicion. They are evidence of a cover-up. The cooler isn't just having a bad day. It's likely been failing for a while. The management knew or should have known, and instead of fixing the problem, a costly repair perhaps, they chose to hide it. They chose to roll the dice with public health. The inspector pulls the thermometer from the chicken salad, cleans and sanitizes it, and moves to another item. A container of cut melons, 50 degrees. A tray of housemaid soup, 52 degrees. It's all the same. The entire contents of this refrigerator are a ticking time bomb. The inspector's mind is now a whirlwind of calculation and procedure. Every single potentially hazardous food item in this cooler must be accounted for. Its journey must be traced. How long has it been at this temperature? When was it prepared? The answers will determine the next course of action. This is no longer a routine inspection. It has escalated. The calm, conversational dance is over. The inspector turns to the manager, the thermometer still in hand, the damning numbers glowing on its small screen. The evidence is irrefutable, and the moment of confrontation has arrived. The words are spoken with a quiet finality, not in anger, but with the unshakable weight of scientific fact. This chicken is at 55 degrees Fahrenheit. The manager's face, which had been a mask of strained hospitality, begins to crumble. First comes denial. The delivery just got here. The door was open for a minute. My guy was just about to put it away. The excuses come out in a torrent, a defensive wall of words meant to push back against the reality of the glowing red numbers. But the inspector has heard them all before. They are the standard refrains in a song played in kitchens across the country, and they don't change the physics of food safety. The inspector holds up a hand, not to be dismissive, but to stop the cascade of justifications. I understand, but it doesn't matter how it got here. What matters is where it is now. And right now, this food is in the temperature danger zone. This is the phrase that changes everything. It's not an opinion. It's a designation, a scientific absolute in the world of public health. The temperature danger zone, the range between 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit, is the perfect breeding ground for the microscopic enemies we can't see, smell, or taste. The inspector begins to explain, turning this moment of confrontation into an impromptu, high-stakes classroom. At this temperature, the inspector says, gesturing to the chicken, bacteria like Salmonella and Campylobacter, the very things that cause severe food poisoning, can double their numbers every 20 minutes. The manager's eyes glaze over slightly, but the inspector presses on, painting a vivid picture. Think of it like this. If there were 1,000 bacteria on this chicken an hour ago, there could be 8,000 now. In another hour, 64,000. An hour after that, over 500,000. It's exponential. We call these TCS foods time and temperature control for safety for a reason. You're not just managing food, you're managing the growth of potentially pathogenic microorganisms. This is the translation layer. The inspector's job isn't just to spot a violation. It's to make the operator understand the profound risk behind the number on a clipboard. It's to connect a temperature reading of 55 degrees to a family getting violently ill, to a child being hospitalized, to a potential outbreak that could shutter a business and ruin lives. The manager, still defensive, might grumble something about never having had a problem before. And this is where the inspector has to be both an educator and an enforcer. You've been lucky, the inspector replies, the tone still even, but with an edge of steel. Public health isn't built on luck. It's built on prevention. My job and your legal responsibility is to prevent that first problem from ever happening. The conversation has shifted. It's no longer about a single box of chicken. It's about a fundamental breakdown in the system of control that keeps customers safe. And now comes the hardest part. The part that costs money. The part that feels like a punishment. This entire case of chicken has to be discarded. Now, the manager recoils as if struck. Discarded? That's hundreds of dollars of product. The protest is immediate, visceral. It's the clash of two opposing forces. The restaurant's bottom line versus the public's well-being. And in this arena, the inspector is the non-negotiable advocate for the public. I can't allow you to serve this. It's a critical violation. The risk is too high. We need to denature it and throw it away. Denature. It's a clinical, almost harsh-sounding word. It means altering the food so it can't be used, pouring bleach on it or salt, or covering it in a colored dye. It is the final irreversible act of removing a threat from the food supply chain. The inspector isn't asking. They are stating a required action. The manager knows they have no choice. Arguing further is pointless. The law is not on their side. Defeated, the manager instructs a kitchen worker to haul the expensive, now condemned product to the dumpster. But the inspector isn't watching the chicken. Their eyes are scanning. This single critical violation has opened up a new line of inquiry. It's a symptom, and the inspector must now find the disease. If the chicken was in the danger zone, why? Was the cooler not working? Was it a staff training issue? Was it a problem with their supplier? The inspection, which had been a broad survey, now becomes a forensic investigation. I need to see your temperature logs for the last month, the inspector says, turning back to the manager. The request is polite, but it's in order. I also need to see when this cooler was last serviced, and I want to talk to the person who received this morning's delivery. A single thread has been pulled, and the inspector is now determined to see how much of the tapestry unravels. They walk over to the walk-in cooler, the source of the problem. They check the thermometer inside. Is it accurate? They look at the seals on the door. Are they tight, or are they cracked and leaking cold air? They observe the organization. Is there raw food stored above ready-to-eat food? Risking cross-contamination? Is everything dated and labeled correctly? This is the cascade effect of a single failure. The trust that existed at the beginning of the inspection has been breached. Now everything is subject to a higher level of scrutiny. The manager, watching the inspector meticulously examine every corner of their operation, feels the walls closing in. The calm, professional demeanor of the inspector is almost more intimidating than outright anger would be. It's the detached, methodical pursuit of risk. It's the quiet, relentless application of the food code. A document that suddenly feels less like a set of guidelines and more like a book of unbendable laws. The inspector is no longer just looking for obvious problems. They are now actively hunting for the root cause. They're connecting the dots. The bad temperature reading on the chicken wasn't an isolated incident. It was a data point. And that data point now suggests a potential pattern of negligence or ignorance. The inspector asks an employee to temp another product in a different cooler. They ask another to demonstrate how they calibrate their thermometers. They are testing the system, pushing on its weak points to see what else breaks. The air in the kitchen is thick with tension. The sizzle of the grill and the clatter of pans are now the soundtrack to a slow-motion disaster unfolding for the restaurant's management. Every question the inspector asks feels like an accusation. Every note they take feels like another nail in the coffin. The initial problem of the warm chicken has metastasized, and the inspection has now entered a far more serious and consequential phase. The inspector's gaze shifts from the walk-in cooler to the main kitchen line, and it's like a searchlight sweeping across a prison yard. Every station, every piece of equipment is now under intense scrutiny. The initial problem wasn't just a problem, it was a symptom, a fever that indicates a deeper infection somewhere in the system. And now the inspector is determined to find the source. They move with a quiet, deliberate economy of motion. It's not a frantic search. It's a methodical dissection of the restaurant's daily life. They watch a line cook, a young guy named Marco who's usually fast and reliable, as he preps for the dinner rush. On his station is a large cutting board, a blur of green as he chops romaine lettuce. The inspector walks over, not saying a word at first, just observing. The silence is heavier than any accusation. Then they point a gloved finger at the board. What was on this board before the lettuce? Marco looks up, a little startled. I was dicing chicken for the quesadillas. The owner's stomach plummets. He can feel the blood drain from his face. He knows what's coming next. The inspector leans in slightly, their voice calm but carrying an undeniable weight. And did you wash, rinse, and sanitize this board and your knife after the chicken? Marco hesitates. That tiny fractional pause is all the answer the inspector needs. I wiped it down. Wiped it down? With what? A Sanitation from the bucket. The inspector picks up the towel from the red sanitizer bucket, and with a small test strip they pull from their kit, dips it in. They hold the strip up to the light. The color barely changes. The sanitizer is too weak. It's basically just red water. In the world of public health, this is a cardinal sin. This is how a single piece of contaminated chicken can poison an entire restaurant full of people. This isn't just a mistake. This is a critical violation. It's a direct pathway for pathogens. The inspector explains it, not with anger, but with the chilling precision of a scientist. Raw chicken can carry salmonella and campylobacter. These bacteria are invisible. You can't see them, smell them, or taste them. Wiping a board with a weak sanitizer doesn't kill them. It just gives them a free ride onto the next food item. In this case, fresh lettuce. Lettuce that is served raw in dozens, maybe hundreds of salads. Every customer who orders a house salad tonight is now at risk. This is the math of an outbreak. It starts with one cutting board, one tired employee, one moment of failed procedure. The inspector isn't just looking at a dirty board. They're looking at the potential start of a public health crisis. The violation is noted on the report, a stark black mark. But it doesn't stop there. The inspector now has clear evidence of two major risk factors: improper temperature control and a breakdown in cross-contamination prevention. The inspection is no longer a routine check. It has been elevated. It's now a full-blown risk assessment. The inspector turns their attention from the equipment to the people. They ask Marco, "Can you show me how you wash your hands?" Feels like a pop quiz where the fate of the business is the final grade. Marco walks to the hand-washing sink, turns on the water, quickly lathers some soap and rinses. The whole process takes maybe 7 seconds. The inspector shakes their head slowly. The code requires a minimum of 20 seconds of vigorous scrubbing. You need to sing happy birthday to yourself twice. They're not being cute. They're providing a specific measurable standard that this employee clearly wasn't taught or isn't following. This reveals another deeper failure. A failure in training and management oversight. It's the owner's responsibility to make sure every single employee knows these rules by heart. Now the floodgates are open. The inspector moves to the dishwashing station. They pull out a special thermometer, a thermal label that reacts to high temperatures, and run a rack of dishes through the machine. When it comes out, the label hasn't changed. The final rinse cycle, the one that's supposed to hit 180 degrees Fahrenheit to thermally sanitize the dishes, is not getting hot enough. The plates, the forks, the knives that people put in their mouths are not being properly sanitized. Another critical violation. They check the 3-compartment sink where pots and pans are washed by hand. They test the sanitizer concentration in the final bay. It's too strong. So strong that chemical residue could be left on the pans, potentially getting into the food. It's a chemical hazard. Another critical violation. It's a cascade. A domino effect of failure. The warm chicken wasn't an isolated incident. It was a thread, and by pulling on it, the inspector is unraveling the entire operation. Each violation is a data point that paints a very bleak picture. It suggests a culture of carelessness, a lack of systems, or a management that is asleep at the wheel. The inspector then asks the question that every restaurant owner dreads. "Can I see your logs, please?" "Which logs?" the owner asks, his voice hoarse. "All of them. Your daily temperature logs for every cooler and freezer for the past 60 days. Your cooling logs for foods like soups and sauces. Your pest control reports. Your shelf stock tags. This is the paper trail. It's the restaurant's diary. It's supposed to be the documented proof that they are actively monitoring for risks every single day, even when an inspector isn't there. If the physical kitchen is failing, the paperwork is the last line of defense. It's the chance to say, "Look, we had a bad day, but our systems are sound. We usually catch these things." The owner retreats to his tiny, cluttered office, his hands shaking as he rifles through binders and folders. Some logs are filled out perfectly. Others have gaps. Entire days are missing. The cooling log for the chili made 2 days ago? It was never filled out. There's no proof it was cooled safely from 140 degrees to 40 degrees within the required 6 hours. For all the inspector knows, it sat on the counter for half the night, a perfect breeding ground for bacteria, before being put in the cooler. He brings the binders out to the inspector, a peace offering of disorganized paper. The inspector flips through them, their face unreadable. Each missing entry, each out-of-temperature reading that wasn't corrected, is another layer of evidence. It confirms the inspector's growing suspicion. The problems here are not accidental. They are systemic. The physical inspection of the kitchen is almost complete. The inspector has tested temperatures, observed staff, checked chemical concentrations, and reviewed the flow of food from receiving to serving. They have found multiple high-risk critical violations, the kind that are directly linked to causing foodborne illness. The owner stands there, surrounded by his staff, who are now all trying to look busy while nervously watching the inspector. The clatter of the kitchen has been replaced by a tense, humming silence. The dream of this restaurant, the life savings, the years of 100-hour work weeks, all of it feels like it's balancing on the edge of a knife. The inspector finishes their notes, clicks their pen shut, and looks the owner directly in the eye. Their voice is low, professional, and devoid of emotion, which makes the words land with even more terrifying force. "I've seen enough out here. I need to speak with you in your office. We have several critical violations that require immediate corrective action." The small, cluttered office smells of stale coffee and desperation. The owner, a man named Frank, who had been all smiles just an hour ago, now slumps into a worn-out chair behind his desk. His face is pale, his bravado gone, replaced by a tight, defensive mask. I close the door, the click of the latch echoing in the sudden silence. This is the part of the job that never gets easier. The confrontation. The delivery of news that can feel like a death sentence to a small business owner. I don't sit. I stand holding my clipboard, creating a deliberate professional distance. Frank, I begin, my voice steady. Let's go over what I found. I'm going to list the critical violations first. These are issues that pose an imminent health hazard and must be corrected before you can serve another customer. He scoffs, a bitter, nervous sound. Imminent health hazard? I've been running this place for 15 years. We've never made anyone sick. Not once. It's a common refrain. The belief that because a disaster hasn't happened yet, it never will. It's like standing in a room filled with gasoline, flicking a lighter, and boasting that the house hasn't exploded. My job is to make them see the gasoline. Let's start with the cutting board station, I say, ignoring his protest. Your line cook was trimming raw chicken on a green cutting board. Moments later, without cleaning or sanitizing that board, another employee used it to chop lettuce for a salad. Do you understand the problem with that? He shifts in his chair. He should have wiped it down. Wiping is not enough, Frank. Raw chicken is frequently contaminated with bacteria like Salmonella and Campylobacter. These are microorganisms you cannot see, smell, or taste. When they are transferred from the chicken to a ready-to-eat food like lettuce, it's called cross-contamination. Someone eats that salad and within 12 to 72 hours, they could be experiencing fever, abdominal cramps, and severe diarrhea. For a child, an elderly person, or someone with a compromised immune system, a salmonella infection can be fatal. This isn't a theoretical risk. This is how outbreaks start. I let the words hang in the air. I can see a flicker of understanding or maybe just fear in his eyes. Press on. Next, the walk-in cooler. Your thermometer is reading 48 degrees Fahrenheit. The legal requirement is 41 degrees or below. Your potato salad, your sliced deli meats, your house-made sauces. All of it is sitting in what we call the temperature danger zone. Between 40 and 140 degrees, bacteria multiply at an exponential rate. A single bacterium can become billions in a matter of hours. The potato salad I tempeed was at 46 degrees. That's a perfect breeding ground for Staphylococcus aureus, which produces a toxin that causes violent vomiting and illness. A toxin, I should add, that is not destroyed by cooking. He runs a hand over his face. The damn cooler's been acting up. I've got a guy coming to look at it tomorrow. Tomorrow is too late, Frank. The food in that cooler has been in the danger zone for an unknown period. It is no longer safe for human consumption. Every single potentially hazardous food item in that unit must be discarded. Immediately. His head snaps up. Discarded? That's thousands of dollars of product. You can't be serious. I am deadly serious. I reply, my tone hardening slightly. I am more serious about this than anything else we will discuss today. You cannot serve that food. Period. But that isn't even our most critical issue. I pause, letting him process the financial blow he's just been dealt. Then, I deliver the final, most damning piece of evidence. Underneath the dishwashing machine, and along the wall behind the dry storage shelves, I found extensive evidence of a rodent infestation. I'm talking about dozens of fresh droppings. This indicates you have an active, significant population of rats or mice living in your kitchen. This time he doesn't argue. He just stares at his desk, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Frank, rodents carry a host of diseases that are transmissible to humans. Hantavirus, which can be fatal. Leptospirosis. Salmonellosis spread through their droppings and urine. They walk across your countertops, your food prep surfaces, your clean dishes, contaminating everything they touch. They are a direct vector for disease. They are urinating and defecating where you prepare food for your customers. There is no acceptable level of rodent activity in a food establishment. The presence of a single dropping is a violation. What you have here is a full-blown infestation. The silence in the room is heavy now, thick with the weight of his failure and the gravity of the situation. You're trying to shut me down, he whispers, his voice cracking. After everything, the pandemic, inflation, you're trying to put me out of business. And here it is, the moment of truth. My role must now shift from enforcer to educator. My goal is not to punish, but to protect the public. And the only way to do that is to get him to understand, to take ownership, and to act. No, Frank, I say, my voice softening, but losing none of its authority. I am not trying to shut you down. I am trying to prevent a foodborne illness outbreak. I'm trying to make sure that a family who comes here for dinner tonight doesn't end up in the emergency room tomorrow. My job is to protect them, and right now your operation is not safe. But this is correctable. I lean forward, placing my hands on his desk. Here is what needs to happen right now. Not tomorrow, not next week. Right now. First, you and I are going to walk through that kitchen, and you are going to voluntarily discard every single item from that walk-in cooler. You're also going to discard any open food packages in the dry storage area where I found droppings. Second, while we do that, you are going to call a licensed pest control operator and have them come out for an emergency service. I will need to see a receipt for that service before I leave. Third, every single food contact surface in this kitchen needs to be thoroughly washed, rinsed, and sanitized. That means every counter, every cutting board, every utensil, every shelf. I stand back up straight. Because of the number and severity of these critical violations, specifically the active pest infestation and the gross cross-contamination potential, I cannot allow you to remain open to the public. You have two options. You can voluntarily close your doors to correct these issues. You'll post a sign, you'll get to work, and you'll call me for a reinspection when you're ready. Or, I can issue an order of suspension for your health permit, and a bright red, closed placard will be posted on your front door by the health department. Either way, you will not be serving food tonight. The choice of how we proceed is yours. I hold his gaze, letting the two paths lay out clearly before him. One is a path of cooperation, of taking responsibility. The other is a path of force, of public shame. The inspector watches Frank, whose face is a mixture of anger, despair, and dawning realization. The entire future of his business, his life's work, now hinges on the next words out of his mouth. Frank's shoulders slump. The fight drains out of him, replaced by a weariness that seems to settle deep in his bones. He looks around his kitchen, not at the violations, but at the ghosts of 15-hour days, of missed family dinners, of a dream that is curdling right in front of him. He finally meets the inspector's gaze, and for the first time there's no defiance, only a quiet, crushing defeat. I don't know what to do, he says, his voice barely a whisper. I'm drowning. I'm working from sunup to midnight. My TV broke, so I haven't watched shows in months. My sous chef quit 2 months ago. I can't find a replacement who knows what they're doing, and I can't afford to pay what the good ones are asking. I'm the prep cook, the line cook, the dishwasher, and the bookkeeper. I know about the cooler. I know. The compressor's been going for weeks. I got a quote. $2,000. It might as well be $1 million. So I just kept buying more ice, hoping it would hold. I told myself it was temporary. Just until that one big catering gig paid out. He gestures vaguely at the walk-in. I know this is all my fault. I got overwhelmed. I started cutting a corner here, letting something slide there. Told myself I'd catch up tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes. There's only today, and today is always worse than yesterday. The inspector listens. They don't interrupt. They don't write anything down. They simply stand there and absorb the confession. This is a critical moment. A pivot point that defines the true purpose of their job. The enforcement tools are still on the table, the power to close the establishment is still very real. But the context has changed. This isn't a case of a cynical owner who willfully disregards public safety for profit. This is a case of a human being pushed past their breaking point, where desperation has led to dangerous neglect. The inspector takes a slow breath, letting the silence hang for a moment. Frank, they begin, their tone shifting from authoritative to something more measured, more consultative. Thank you for being honest with me. I know that wasn't easy. What you're describing, we see it more often than you think. Good people, good chefs who get in over their heads. The inspector gestures for Frank to pull up a milk crate, and they grab one for themselves, sitting down amidst the chaos of the kitchen. The power dynamic shifts instantly. They are no longer an authority figure looming over a subject, but two people sitting at the same level. Let's forget about the report for a minute. Let's forget about the grate on the door. Right now, none of that matters as much as this. We have a series of conditions in this kitchen that can make people seriously ill. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. My job isn't to punish you for that. My job is to stop it from happening. The best way to do that is to help you fix it. Permanently. This is the fork in the road made real. The path of education. It's not about leniency. The standards are immutable. It's about a strategic shift in method. An inspector who only writes tickets and shuts places down is just putting out fires. An inspector who teaches, who explains the why behind the rules, is preventing the fires from ever starting again. They are building a more resilient public health infrastructure, one restaurant at a time. So let's start with the science, the inspector says, their voice now that of a teacher. The walk-in cooler. You know it needs to be at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below. But do you know why that specific number is so important? Frank shakes his head. It's called the temperature danger zone. It's the range between 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit. In that range, bacteria like Salmonella E. coli Listeria can double in number every 20 minutes. At 50 degrees where your cooler is, you're not just storing food, you're incubating pathogens. That chicken you have in there? After a few hours, the bacterial load could be hundreds of times higher than when it arrived. That's why the ice trick doesn't work. It might cool the area right next to the bag, but the ambient temperature of the air, the surfaces, the food itself, is a paradise for bacteria. Suddenly, the abstract rule becomes a terrifyingly concrete image. Frank pales, thinking of the food he served yesterday. The value of this education is immense. It transforms a regulation from a bureaucratic hurdle into a critical, science-based control. Same with the cutting board, the inspector continues, pointing to the deeply grooved plastic board. You think you're cleaning it, but those knife cuts create tiny canyons. You can't get a sponge or a cloth deep into them. So when you chop raw chicken, salmonella gets in those grooves. Then you wipe it down and slice tomatoes for a salad. That's cross-contamination. The heat from cooking would kill the salmonella on the chicken, but the tomato is served raw. You're now serving a salad with a potential dose of foodborne illness. A new smooth cutting board, or properly resurfacing this one, eliminates those hiding places. For the next hour, the kitchen becomes a classroom. The inspector breaks down the science behind every critical violation. They explain the life cycle of mold, the mechanics of pest infestation, the chemistry of sanitizers. This isn't about shaming Frank. It's about empowering him. When he understands the why, he's no longer just following a rule. He's actively managing a risk. He's becoming a partner in public health. Finally, the inspector pulls out a fresh page on their clipboard. Okay, we can't fix everything in one day, but we have to fix the most dangerous things right now. This is a corrective action plan. We're going to build it together. They start with the critical violations. Item 1. All potentially hazardous foods in the walk-in and prep coolers that have been in the temperature danger zone for more than 4 hours must be discarded. Now, Frank looks like he's been punched. That's hundreds of dollars of product. I know, the inspector says, their voice firm but not unkind. And I know that hurts. But you have two choices. You can throw it in the dumpster, or you can serve it to a customer and potentially send them or their child to the hospital. There is no third choice. Which one is it? The weight of that responsibility settles on Frank. He nods slowly, the financial loss paling in comparison to the human cost he'd never truly considered. Together they go to the walk-in. Item by item, the inspector points, and Frank, with a heavy heart, throws the food into a large trash bin. It's a painful, expensive, but necessary surgery. Next, the plan outlines the immediate cleaning and sanitizing of all food contact surfaces. It details the urgent need to get the cooler repaired. The inspector even provides Frank with a list of certified commercial refrigeration technicians in the area. They lay out a schedule for pest control, a protocol for checking temperatures every 2 hours, a plan for staff training, even if the only staff is Frank himself right now. The document they create isn't a list of failures. It's a blueprint for survival. It's a step-by-step guide out of the hole Frank has dug for himself. As they finish, the sun is beginning to set. The kitchen is still a mess, and the trash bin full of discarded food is a testament to the scale of the problem. But for the first time all day, Frank feels a sliver of something he thought was gone for good: hope. The mountain in front of him no longer seems unscalable. Now he has a map. The inspector stands up. Their job here for today is almost done. This is a good plan, Frank. It's aggressive, but it's achievable. The closure order remains in effect. You cannot serve any food to the public until you are in full compliance, and I have conducted a re-inspection. They look at Frank, the tone shifting back to one of official authority. A reminder that this partnership is built on a foundation of non-negotiable standards. I can come back in 48 hours. That's 2 days. You need to have that cooler fixed and holding temperature. You need to have this entire facility cleaned and sanitized to standard. And you need to have every other item on this corrective action plan completed. Can you do that? Frank looks at the list, then around his broken kitchen. 2 days seems like an impossibly short amount of time. It will mean no sleep, calling in favors he doesn't have, and spending money he can't access. It is a monumental task. But it's also a second chance. A lifeline he never expected to get. He takes a deep breath, the exhaustion still there, but now mixed with a new unfamiliar surge of determination. The first 24 hours are a blur of bleach and despair. He scrubs grime from corners he didn't know existed, his knuckles raw, the acrid smell burning his lungs. Every square inch of the kitchen feels like an accusation. This isn't just cleaning. It's an archaeological dig through layers of his own failure. He fills 37 trash bags the first day, 37 monuments to his neglect. He collapses onto a booth seat, the vinyl cracked and cold, and for a moment the monumental task feels impossible. The weight of it all presses down and he thinks about walking away, just locking the door and never looking back. But then he remembers the inspector's words. Not the violations he listed, but the other thing he said quietly as he was about to leave. The bones of this place are good. Don't let them rot. It wasn't a threat. It was an observation. Challenge, maybe. The bones of this place are good. He looks around past the filth and tries to see what the inspector saw. He sees the custom-built bar his father installed. The solid oak tables they picked out together. The layout, perfect for the flow of a busy dinner service. The bones. He gets up. He makes a pot of coffee, the first thing made in the now spotless machine, and it tastes like hope. He creates a new checklist. Not the inspector's but his own. It's a battle plan. He starts with the finances. He calls his suppliers. He expects anger, demands for payment. And he gets some. But from an old produce guy named Sal, he gets something else. Heard you were in some trouble, Sal says. Pay me what you can now. We'll figure out the rest when you're back on your feet. It's a small crack of light in a dark room. That light widens. A former line cook, Maria, who quit a month ago, shows up at the door. My cousin told me you were trying to fix this place, she says, holding up a pair of work gloves. You always paid me on time. You need help. She doesn't ask for pay. She just starts scrubbing the walk-in freezer. The next day, 2 more former employees show up. Word has gotten around. Not about the failure, but about the fight. About the second chance. The inspector had given him a list of low-cost food safety courses offered by the county. He signs up. He sits in a sterile classroom with teenagers getting their first restaurant job and other owners who look just as tired as he feels. He learns about cross-contamination not as a rule, but as a scientific principle. He learns about the temperature danger zone, not as a number to memorize, but as the literal breeding ground for bacteria that could ruin a family's week or worse. For the first time, he understands the why, the public health part of it all. It's not about arbitrary rules. It's about protecting people. It's about being a responsible part of the community. The inspector had also pointed him to a microloan program for small businesses, run by a local nonprofit. He spends a whole day filling out paperwork, his chef's hands clumsy with a pen. He has to detail his failures, his debts, his mistakes. It's humiliating. But at the end of the application, there's a section for a plan of action. And as he writes, detailing the new cleaning schedules, the staff training protocols, the inventory system he's designed to reduce waste and spoilage, he feels that surge of determination again. He's not just fixing the past, he's building a future. 2 weeks later, the place is unrecognizable. The stainless steel shines. The floors are spotless. Every food container is labeled and dated. Maria has reorganized the entire dry storage room, implementing a first-in, first-out system. The air no longer smells of stale grease, but of fresh paint and disinfectant. It's not perfect. The old tables are still scratched. The sign out front is still faded. But it's clean. It's safe. The bones are good. He makes the call. He tells the health department he's ready for his reinspection. The next 48 hours are the longest of his life. He can't sleep. He just cleans. He re-cleans things that are already clean. He quizzes his small, loyal crew on hand-washing procedures. Then the bell on the front door chimes. It's him. The same inspector. He holds the same clipboard, has the same neutral expression. He doesn't say hello. He just nods and says, "Let's begin." The owner's heart hammers against his ribs as he follows him into the kitchen. He watches the inspector run a gloved finger along the top of the ventilation hood. Comes away clean. He watches him check the temperature logs for the walk-in cooler. They're all filled out every 2 hours exactly as required. He opens the lowboy refrigerator, pulling out a container of diced onions. He checks the date on the label. It's from that morning. He tests the sanitation water at the 3-compartment sink. The chemical strip turns the perfect shade of green. Every check is a bullet dodged. Every nod is a small victory. The inspector is thorough, silent, and methodical. He moves with a purpose that is no longer intimidating, but respectable. The owner realizes he isn't looking for ways to fail him. He's confirming that the standards have been met. He is verifying the safety of this establishment on behalf of every person who will one day walk through that door. After what feels like an eternity, the inspector makes his last note. He stands in the middle of the kitchen, the same spot where he delivered the devastating news just weeks before. He looks at the owner, and for the first time his professional mask slips just a little. A hint of a smile touches his eyes. "You did the work," he says. He peels a sticker from a sheet on his clipboard and walks to the front of the restaurant. He carefully places it high on the glass of the front door. It's a large blue letter. The owner follows him out, his legs feeling weak with relief. As the inspector prepares to leave, he turns. "This is the hardest part," the inspector says. "Keeping it this way, every single day." "I know," the owner replies, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." The inspector just nods and walks to his car. He never looks back. He has another inspection in 30 minutes. This story, or a version of it, happens thousands of times a year, all across the country. It's the unseen part of the job. For every shocking headline about a restaurant being shut down, there are 100 quiet successes where an inspector chose to be a partner, not just a punisher. Where they saw a business owner not as an adversary, but as a person who was overwhelmed, undereducated, or just plain struggling. They understand that public health isn't just about enforcement, it's about capacity building. A closure is a failure of the system. A reopened, compliant, and educated business is a victory for the entire community. This is the philosophy that drives the modern health inspector. They are educators, scientists, and communicators, armed with a deep understanding of epidemiology, microbiology, and perhaps most importantly, human nature. Their work extends far beyond restaurants. They are the ones ensuring the chlorine levels in the public pool are correct, preventing recreational water illnesses. They are the ones inspecting tattoo parlors, making sure needles are sterile to stop the spread of blood-borne pathogens. They walk through childcare centers, checking for sanitation and safety hazards to protect the most vulnerable among us. They are a largely invisible shield. Their successes are measured in things that don't happen. The foodborne illness outbreak that was prevented. The child who didn't get sick at daycare. The infection that was never transmitted. We don't see the crises they avert, so we rarely, if ever, stop to think about the people who avert them. The next time you walk into a restaurant and see that letter grade in the window, whether it's an A, B, or C, know that it represents more than just a score. It's a snapshot in time of a complex, ongoing process. It's a testament to a system designed to protect you. And behind that letter is a story of a business owner trying to achieve a dream, and a public health professional, a health inspector, working quietly and diligently to make sure that dream doesn't become a public nightmare. It is a symbol of a fundamental trust between those who serve us and those who protect us. A trust that is earned, inspected, and reestablished, one clean kitchen at a time.